Hello my fans, welcome to my first review. On this episode of my TV show reviews, I'll be reviewing the 2004 British show, and that on is Peppa Pig. This show is the worst preschool series I've ever seen in my life. And even everyone else. It's been on the air for 21 years now. The show was started to air in 2004. This show involves an idiotic pig named Peppa, who has her annoying brother named George, and her family. Now, I'll talk about the characters. First thing we have is Peppa herself. Speaking of which, the main problem with her character is that she treats other people mostly poorly, as she often acts like a brat towards them and is often a jerk for seemingly no reason whatsoever. She is mean towards her family members. She is mostly rude towards her father, as she often fat shames him for no apparent reason and treats him like a punching bag. Even if her dad is overweight, constantly fat shaming him is not only cruel and mean, but it is also offensive to obese people who want to lose weight. She is also rude to George Pig most of the time, as she often excludes him whenever one of her friends comes over to visit, and whenever he does something that Peppa doesn't want him to do, she ridicules and jeers at him. Her design, while cute and not too bad, much like with all the other characters in the show, is too simplistic and poorly drawn. She almost always gets away with being nasty to others and receives little to no consequences at all for her actions, making her a karma Houdini. An example is Richard Rabbit comes to play. Peppa and Susie force George and Richard to stop playing with their dinosaurs, and they make them play with doctors which they don't want to play with, and ends up making the two cry. Instead of scolding Peppa and Susie for being rude to George and Richard, Peppa's parents let them all go outside and jump in muddy puddles. Thus, Peppa doesn't get punished for being rude to others, despite this episode having a good ending. Not to mention, the whole episode would have never happened if Peppa and Susie hadn't forced George and Richard to stop playing with their dinosaurs, or if they just played in another room of the house. Another example is Swimming, where she is teasing and being mean to George, Richard, and Daddy Pig, and of course never gets punished, scolded, called out, or didn't even get any consequences. While it could be possible that the parents didn't hear Peppa saying that George and Richard are bad swimmers, she fat shamed Daddy Pig in front of everyone, so she should at least get a scolding or get called out. Peppa always refuses to accept it when someone else wins in a game. Whenever she loses a game, she acts like a sore loser and concludes that the other player cheated or intentionally did something to mess her up when they didn't. She usually goes so far as to do the most unrealistic things, all because she loses in a game. In the infamous episode The Quarrel, she falls out with her best friend Susie Sheep, all because she lost in a game of Snap. In the episode where they play soccer, Danny Dog, who was on the other team, scores, and Peppa remorselessly says this is a silly game, but it turns out he accidentally scored the wrong team, which meant Peppa and her teammates got a point. And she instantly changed her mind and said, "This is a great game." She constantly says it's not fair, just because the odds aren't in her favor. Whenever she fails at something she only did once, she calls it impossible, proving just how much of a sore loser she is. Another example is in Bat and Ball, where she was scolding her friends for playing a game and she acts like a poor sport. To make matters worse, this was in season 6, which is when she was starting to improve as a character. In Sports Day, she blames Susie for causing them to lose, saying she was talking to her while arguing, which is hypocritical, as she then said to George, "You can't always win," later in the episode. In one episode, Snow, although it was an accident, she threw a snowball at George, getting him flattened, stunned, and made him cry. Of course, she didn't want this to happen, but she is 3 years older than her brother and should be mature and careful. Fortunately, she apologizes to him. In another episode called George's Balloon, she rubs it in George's face that his balloon is going to the moon, which makes poor George cry. What a great example of a big sister you are, Peppa. She often gets angry and worked up over the pettiest reasons. For example, she gets angry at Susie because she accused her of being a chatterbox and chatterbox, after which Peppa tries to never talk again, which doesn't make sense. You don't decide to never talk again just because someone tells you that you talk too much. She almost lacks any character development throughout the show, as she never learns from her mistakes and wrongdoings, neither does she feel remorseful about her actions. Sometimes, she is very deceitful about what she likes to play with, as she only cares about doing girl activities like playing with dolls and wearing red dresses, and gets tricky when she does boy activities, making her sexist. An example of her being sexist is when she tried to ban boys from coming into her treehouse. While she was tolerable in the first 2 episodes of the series, as of the 3rd episode, Best Friend, she has been derailed to become much bossier than she was before. She can have a bad influence on children watching the show, as she can do things that are dumb or straight up dangerous. As said earlier, she has a habit of jumping in muddy puddles, which may encourage children to have self-neglect on their hygiene. In Mr. Skinny Legs and Spiderweb, Peppa and her family can be seen playing around with a spider that they found. Considering that while most other spiders are harmless in other countries, Australia, however, was home to lots of deadly venomous spiders. Therefore, these episodes have been permanently banned from ever airing in Australia due to having this moral. Australia's spiders are venomous enough to kill a human, especially the brown recluse spider. If that's what they do to an adult, then just imagine what that could do to the primary demographic for the show as a whole. She is one of the main reasons the show is mediocre, as she is the protagonist, and most people probably won't like a show with a mean and unlikable main character. In fact, she appears in every episode of the series, which means we have to put up with her in many episodes, even though she is likable in many episodes, especially in the more recent seasons. Number 2, George Pig. George has addiction of his stupid toy dinosaur. One of the main problems with him is the main running gag of him crying. In most episodes he is in, there always has to be a scene where he ends up crying over something and it's annoying to listen to, not helped by the fact that the same crying sound effects are reused in every episode. Also, after he cries, he always makes a sobbing sound that goes like he hit, which makes it sound like laughter than sobbing. His design, despite being passable, is extremely simple, but bland, like most of the other characters of Peppa Pig. Aside from the recurring joke of crying all the time, he also has a running gag where he only says the word dinosaur, which is somewhat annoying for the most part. You wanna hear it? Then here's why. See? This is why George is nothing but a stupid crybaby who has a stupid addiction of his stupid dinosaur. On that topic, he constantly laments about his love for dinosaurs, yet he starts getting frightened whenever he hears their roaring, which is both ironic and hypocritical at the same time. He is often very disobedient at times, as he always tries his best to gain attention in the show. That can also result in George being an egotist. Although not as bad as Peppa, he is shown to be somewhat of a bad role model to young children. He sometimes chooses to not listen to his parents or to Peppa when they tell him to not do something. For example, in George Catches a Cold, he keeps trying to take off his rain hat, even though his parents tell him not to do that because of the risk of catching a cold. George was also slightly aggravating, as he kept asking why, and he continuously coughed like he was gonna throw up or puke, which was beyond gross. George acts as a bully to most kids his age for barely any reason. Him and Richard smashed each other's sandcastles in George's Friend, which was uncalled for. Unlike Bingo from Bluey, Bingo is not even a crybaby. Number 3, Daddy Pig. Daddy Pig is nothing but a complete fat ass. He does worst job on parenting of his daughter and his son, and also, why the hell is he fat? Did he eat too much McDonald's or Burger King before appearing? Number 4, Mommy Pig. Well, the words about her is nothing, and I also don't have to say about Evie Pig, because she is also a crybaby for no reason, and also, other characters like Chloe Pig, Alexander Pig, Susie Sheep, Rebecca Rabbit, Freddy Fox, Candy Cat. No one gives a shit about those characters, they're just mediocre. The Healers from Bluey is a better family than the Pig, but the Pig family is one of the worst families in the cartoon history. This show also has stupid theme parks, like Peppa Pig World at Paulton's Park, Peppa Pig World of Play, Peppa Pig Land in Gardaland in Italy, and Hyde Park in Germany, Peppa Pig Theme Park in Legoland, Florida, and Lego Duplo Peppa Pig in Legoland Billund Resort. Let's also not forget that this show has its stupid video games, Peppa Pig, the game for the Nintendo DS, Peppa Pig, fun and games for Nintendo DS and Nintendo with Peppa Pig. Theme park fun for Nintendo DS, My Friend Peppa Pig for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and Windows, and Peppa Pig, World Adventures for PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and Series S, Nintendo Switch and Windows. At least that I didn't bought those games. Thank goodness. And let's not forget about the movies that they were released in cinemas. Peppa Pig, The Golden Boots from 2015, Peppa Pig, My First Cinema Experience from 2017, Peppa Pig, Festival of Fun from 2019, Peppa Celebrates Chinese New Year from 2019, Peppa's Cinema Party from 2024, and Peppa Pig Meets the Baby from 2025. Those movies are so stupid. So, what is my rating on this show? I am giving this show a 2 out of 10. This is one of the worst British shows ever existed, and I cannot believe I used to like this show 2 years ago in 2024, and last year in 2025, but thank God I'm starting to hate this show. But anyways, that concludes my rant, review. See you in the next video.